You can deal, Dr. Rogers.
All right. Well, my name's Dave Rogers, and this is my last lecture. I hope it's not my last lecture, but it might be. You never know when your last day is going to be. And I'm going to talk about 5 indispensable qualities essential for success that I learned before I came here. This is my 3rd career. My first career was in the military, and as an aviator, as an intelligence officer, as a troubleshooter. And then I owned 3 engineering companies, actually 2 engineering companies, a regular civil, structural, geotechnical, environmental planning company with offices in Los Angeles and San Francisco. And then I had a forensic engineering company, which was just based in the San Francisco Bay Area. And then I had a general engineering construction and construction management company that did work in the Pacific Coast and in Hawaii. And so I had 3, and then I retired from that, started teaching part-time at Cal Berkeley in '94. Prior to that, I taught 2 years part-time at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey. And then they created a nice position here for me and enticed me to come here in 2001. I'm the Carl F. Hasselman Chair in Geological Engineering. That's the only endowed chair in geological engineering or engineering geology in the United States. So, and I like this school. I like the kids here particularly, especially the ones that have common sense. There seems to be more of those here than I had at Berkeley. Okay, a little bit about me. In my lifetime, I was privileged to do a lot of different things, and I'll move this over so I don't have to keep looking in the other direction. That's okay. And I got to work on engineering problems all over the world. I got to the North Pole, the South Pole, and 61 countries. So I wasn't home very much. That's the part that I have regrets about. I ended up becoming a troubleshooter. That's somebody who works on complex problems, and you put together a specialized team of experts to work on a problem. And one of the things I learned is that the people I ended up using were just the opposite of all the very world-famous professors that I had grown up with in 6 years at grad school at Berkeley. In academia, they train you to be a niche expert, an expert in a narrow little area, so that you can get all the research funding in the world on that one particular area. It might be tsetse flies on the middle fork of the Cumberland River in central Kentucky. You're the world expert on the tsetse flies along the Cumberland River, and that's good because you bring in all the tsetse fly research money to the university, and the university takes more than half right off the top. Mafia never took that much from anybody. And the people that I had on these teams that were great problem solvers, they had very checkered resumes. They had done a lot of different things in their lives. A lot of them had started working when they were 9, 10, 11, 12. I don't think any of them had not started working before age 18. I had signed up for the Marine Corps when I was 17. And that was pretty typical. They were hard-working people who had seen a lot of things in their lifetime. And they were a lot of fun to work with. And so I already told you that I own these different engineering firms. I never got an MBA degree. I want you to know that. So I'm going to talk about business here. I do have my DIW degree, and that's for doing it wrong. I did just about everything wrong you could do wrong in running a business the first 10 years I had Rogers Pacific. And it's painful to think back on all the mistakes I made. I was only 30 years old when I started the company, and I wasn't old enough or well-traveled enough or mature enough to own an engineering company that age. I had to make a lot of mistakes. I ended up giving the Bank of America and Wells Fargo Bank $1.13 million in interest payments over the 17 years that I had Rogers Pacific and GeoGrid. And that pains me very much today. And if I have one thing I want to leave you with, it is don't borrow money, if you can keep from borrowing money. You want to have all these things in life? That's great. Don't borrow money. What did I learn in college that was of great value? I took 10 years of college. Never dreamed I'd be 10 years of college. I had a lot of fun in grad school. Undergraduate, not so much fun. You had to just take a lot of stuff, and you didn't have a lot of choices, and you couldn't really crack the book open and read the book. There just wasn't time enough. But grad school, I really got to learn a lot more. But one of the classes I took, which you all have to take as freshmen, is Psych 101. I don't want to take psychology. It's going to be some liberal, blah, 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 Anyway, I had this liberal. Her name was Donna Yilk, and she kind of looked like a hippie. And she had gotten her doctorate at UCLA. And she actually, that class of my philosophy class, introduced me to a lot of interesting concepts. And I'll never forget this one. They had worked at UCLA in the psychology department on looking at people who won Hollywood game shows, because UCLA is right next to Hollywood. And so they wanted to study these people's lives, even the people that won large amounts of money, and see how are they doing 10 years later. And they were stunned at what they found. In every single instance, no matter how many millions of dollars people won, 10 years later, they were living at exactly the same point that they were before they won the money. So what's your conclusion to that? Her conclusion was, we all get to where we are in life, and what station we are in life, in accordance with our training and ability and desire to manage our resources. Same thing in college. You have to manage your time. What did I get out of college? It wasn't the knowledge. It was learning how to live away from home, how to do my own laundry, how much I appreciated having clean underwear. Ever wear dirty underwear for 5 days in a row? Yeah, I know. Okay, but this is not fun. But you have to manage your time. You have to become a better time manager every year you're in school. That's what happened with me. I started out going to the community college, and I remember some of my math classes in community college, there were like 7 people in them. 18,000 students at the school, but only 7 taking college trade. So not a lot of serious, engineering, science-bound students. Then I went to the California State Polytechnic University, and that was quite a step up. And I did very well there. I graduated top of my class. When I went to Cal Berkeley, I took a huge step up. There, I was only with the top 1% of high school graduates could even apply to Berkeley. And in the graduate school program I was in, I was one of 93 graduate students. I was the youngest one there. But I had just come out of the Marine Corps, so I had a very short haircut in Berkeley in the mid-70s. That was unusual. I never forget my first day walking to school, and there was some guy with a British top hat and a bunch of stringy hair, and he's just whipping it out and peeing against a tree. And as I walked past him with my Marine gait, kind of looking like, ugh, he looked at me, tipped his hat, and goes, "Top of the day to you." There's a lot of weird people around here. I don't know how long I'm going to last here. But I loved Berkeley, and I learned a lot of things. And there was a world-famous professor there who had just been appointed to the Teton Dam Investigation Board, and he needed somebody to go up there and be the eyes and ears of that board and to do the dissection on the dam, and he chose me. And I never knew, I was the envy of every person in that department, and the average age was 27. I was 22 and a half. And he sent me. Years later, I asked him, I said, "Harry, why did you pick me out of everybody?" He goes, "Because you were Eagle Scout of the Year and you were a Marine, and I was sending you off to a Mormon town. I wanted somebody who didn't drink alcohol and wouldn't have sex with one of the Mormon girls. You're the only one I look trustworthy." I figured if a guy will walk around here with that kind of haircut, he's got to have a lot of balls. So opportunity will come to you when you're different. That's hard for young people. Young people don't want to be different. We have a fear of embarrassment. It took me years to realize that people didn't hire me to do engineering. That's what I was trained to do in school. Here's got a problem, got to design a bridge, here's how you design a bridge. No, people hire you to solve problems. You really want to be successful in business, you got to be a marriage counselor. You got to sit down with people, look them in the eye, pour a couple of cups of coffee and say, "Tell me about your problem. Tell me about your problem. What is it that you want solved?" And you got to go through all kinds of stories about their life and about their dogs, and all these different things in their car. But you better get to the bottom line of what is the problem they want solved, and how much they want to pay, and what are they expecting over here on the end. And those are usually very disparate. But if you don't do that first, right at the outset, you're not going to be successful. You're going to do something you think they want, and then you get it all done, you bring it to them, and they look at you like, "That's not what I was expecting." And people don't pay for things they weren't expecting. It's like getting a large load of cow poop on your doorstep. You're not going to pay for that. You might pay to have it removed, but you're not going to pay to have it. So today, I teach courses for the Department of Defense on creativity that's essential for problem solving, successful problem solving. Step number one. What is step number one? You got to win a hearing with a potential client or customer. Sam Walton was great at this. Read his biography or watch the A&E program. It's a lot quicker. And what he did is, he sat outside the door. He had the lowest priced panties, women's panties, in the whole state of Arkansas. And it brought women in by the droves. And when they came in there to get their panties, they'd also buy other stuff. And he'd talk to them. Now you'd say, well, they're a bunch of dumb hillbillies. Well, they spend money at your store. He would talk to his customers. So he got to know his client base. It wasn't the same client base that goes to Neiman Marcus. It wasn't the client base that goes to the big city, big department stores. It was the Kmart crowd. Okay? That's who it was. And what he did is he made sure every week, every day, they had something there that was the lowest price in the state of Arkansas. And so people gradually got the feeling that that was the lowest priced place to go. And he played into that. People make their decisions about the products they choose between the ages of 15 and 30. That's all Hollywood sells their commercials to. If a bunch of older folks like me like a TV program, tough manure. Tough manure. They're not trying to capture me. I've already decided what kind of toothpaste I'm going to use. So Madison Avenue doesn't go after me. So you got to learn to read people. It's really important. And when you work somewhere, learn to give perfect greetings. Learn to say, hi, my name's Dave Rogers. I'm glad to meet you. What's your name? And the people who are most successful in business have two attributes. One, they can remember names. And two, they tell jokes. Telling a joke well is an art. If Bob Hope had run for president of this country, he would have been elected. That's how Abraham Lincoln got elected. He was the best joke teller. And it drove other people nuts who had big resumes with lots of degrees and lots of political experience and all these qualifications, and yet all these hayseeds out there, all these Ozarkians voted for Lincoln. Because Lincoln could disarm people, even political opponents, by making them laugh. When I worked for Ronald Reagan, when he was president, that's what he did. He had an incredible capacity to remember people's names, and he had an incredible capacity to disarm them by telling stories that were self-depreciating of him and making people laugh. You're not going to hate somebody that makes you laugh, even if you don't agree with their politics or their morals. Learn to give perfect greetings. That's really important. It puts people at ease. Because where we're going to drive this train is, people give their business to whoever it is that they trust. That's the key word. Two key words in life: love, trust. Two most important words in our language. Become familiar with the history of the organization you work in. Learn about who their champions were. Champions are what we refer to in the business world as the names, those personalities that bring the work to that organization. Or they are, who you think of. Like you say, Missouri Highway Patrol. Who's the head guy of the Missouri Highway Patrol? The guy that interfaces with the legislature in Jeff City. The one that goes up there and talks. And he can't be a nerd. He's got to be able to sell what the Highway Patrol does to the people that pay the bills. Make yourself aware of the big picture, not just the day-to-day details of what you do in your little division. But learn about what the whole organization does. What is it that we do? Who are our competitors? Where's the future going? These are important things to ask yourself. Many of today's problems are unique and they're unprecedented, especially because we have a world competition now. If you invent something that has to be manufactured and you make a whole lot of money on it, you get patented, you do it all right, you're only going to ride high for about 3 years. And you're going to have competitors, believe me. So success breeds imitation. Let's look at rock stars. Rock stars started putting tattoos on their arms. Pretty soon everybody's doing tattoos. You're sitting there going, do you realize you can't take those things off? Who cares about that's tomorrow. This is today. I want to look cool because the rock star's got it over there. I had a teacher in high school, and he had gotten a tattoo. He was the only teacher within the Navy that had a tattoo. He was also the only teacher wearing long sleeve shirts when it was 104 degrees out. And he told us, don't do it. You don't know how things are going to change down the line. Tomorrow's solutions are going to require more and more innovation and creativity because it's more and more competitive. We have to consciously work at developing a creative mindset. What is that? All right, backup plan. Down arrow. Step 2, cultivating trust with clients and customers. Most customers don't want to try new things. If you tell them, we've never done this before, they're going to immediately shy back from it. Because they're worried about embarrassment, costly delays, lawsuits, permit considerations. Nobody wants to say, well, you're the guy that hired them, George, and now that project's gone south. Now it's in trouble. They don't want that. That's why they tend to hire firms that are very tried and true. We call blue chip firms. Firms that have been around a long time. I remember IBM, when we first got microcomputers, and everybody was making fun of IBM for not getting into the microcomputer market, because IBM was a typewriter company. And suddenly, in the early 80s, IBM got into the microcomputer market, because they replaced typewriters. And IBM never had a sale on anything. Read Thomas J. Watson's book, A Business and Its Beliefs, one of the best books you can ever read. He did that while he was at Harvard Business School for a year in 1962. They never had a sale. What they sell is service and expertise. They're the top. Why did I go with them? Like everything else. I tried the cheapest ones first, and they let me down. And when somebody lets you down, you don't get your report out the door by 3 o'clock on Friday, your client doesn't care what your excuse is. You could have pneumonia. Your dad could have gotten shot. It doesn't matter. You didn't get the report to them the day you promised. When I tried to make it a habit to do with Rogers Pacific, because we would promise you the report, we'd always get it to you when? Early, day before. Almost always. Hardly ever delivered a report on the day it was due. Because if you wait and try to get it done on the day it's due, you don't leave any room for yourself for all the stuff that can go wrong. I learned that the hard way. I lost a big client. And so I went to IBM because IBM was the only one that made this promise. They said, you rent our equipment to do your word processing. If anything goes down, you call us within 1 hour. We'll either have it repaired or you'll have a replacement in your office. So you keep the business flow going. So I went with them. In the end, I went with everybody, all my subcontractors were the most expensive ones. Because what I had to have was reliability. Listen to that, young people. When they're hiring somebody to take tickets at a theater, the one thing that manager wants, he doesn't need the highest IQ person in the world, he needs reliability. He needs you to show up when you've promised to show up. You know, if you had a bad date or a bad day or something happens and you call them at the 11th hour, 10 minutes before you're supposed to be there and say, yeah, I can't come in tonight, you know, I got party, I don't feel good. Don't feel that. You just let them down. And you're putting the load on the other people that work there. And they're going to start resenting you. And you're probably going to lose the job. Trust is earned in large measure by perceptions of our character. Coach John Wooden, the winningest coach of the 20th century, won 10 NCAA basketball championships in 12 years at UCLA. Didn't win his first championship, kids, for 12 years. Today, we would have fired him. We wouldn't give anybody 12 years to produce a winner. UCLA did. He went there in 48, didn't get his first championship until 1960. What did he say? He said, be more concerned about your character than your reputation. Your reputation is merely what others think of you, but your character defines who you really are. Your character is going to cultivate trust with those with whom you work. Clients give their business to people or organizations that they trust. I went off to marriage counseling with my wife. She wanted me to go. I didn't want to go. But my wife loves me, and I know that. And if she asks me to do something, I'm going to go do it. So I went and did it. one of the things I learned about marriage counseling incredibly changed my business life, and that was follow-up. Sitting down with somebody and saying, tell me how I'm doing. Give me a critical assessment. First time I did that with my employees, I scheduled 15 minutes for each employee. The first employee didn't get out of my office for an hour and 51 minutes. It was a tough day. It was a whole tough week. I learned about all kinds of things. He said, you really want to know what I think? Yeah, I really want to know. I'm going to take notes. Well, I started doing that with our clients. And the clients were just blown away. They said, you're the first engineer, all the years I worked, who's ever come in here and asked me these kind of questions. Because I just think this is great. And we changed the way we did things. One of the things we learned right off the bat was insurance companies wanted to have a one-page summary, an executive summary. They had all these reports we'd write, and they say, what's the executive summary? One page. Tell me the essential things I need to know, so I don't have to wade through all this paper that you put together here. Attorneys wade through all the paper when they're suing you. Don't worry. That's why you do all the paper. Well, I had a follow-on with State Farm. They're the largest insurer of homes in the United States. They're based in Bloomington, Illinois. They have a Western Regional office in San Francisco, 37-story high building, and up at the top story is where the managerial folks are. And I had a meeting with their chief counsel, Mark Vitale, and with his staff there. We had the chief adjuster and all these different people. There's about 3 of them that I was meeting with, and I had an 11 o'clock meeting. And I took BART, the rapid transit system, over there to San Francisco. You can't get a parking place in San Francisco. And when I had to get a special pass that you put in the elevator so you can go to the 37th floor. It doesn't have public access. And I got up there, and of course the first thing I asked, I got there 10 minutes early. You always plan on getting there 15 minutes early so you're not late. You never, ever, ever, ever want to be late. You don't have to be. So I have to always plan on being there 15 minutes early. So I was only 5 minutes later than I should have been. And I needed to go to the restroom. So I asked Vitale, I didn't see him in his office, I asked the secretary, where's the restroom? She says the executive washroom is down here and over to the right. And when I got in there, big mess. Somebody had had a big mess. And both ends. And I didn't know how to negotiate my way to the 36th floor to use their bathroom, and I had to go. And I have 5 kids, so I know how to clean up big messes. Vomit messes, poop messes, any of that, you know, as long as I have enough paper towels and toilet paper, you can clean up messes. They got soap and everything. So I just set to work. And in a few short minutes, I got it all cleaned up. I used the bathroom. Well, in the meantime, Vitale had tried to go to the bathroom, had seen the mess, had hit the panic button, and he was trying to find a janitor to come up there and clean it up. And it's 11 o'clock in the morning, 10:45. You're not going to find a janitor. And janitors come in about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then he went back to his office, and the secretary said, well, where's Rogers? He said, well, I sent him to the restroom. Oh, no, he didn't send him to the restroom. The restroom's a mess. So he comes running over there right as I'm washing up and finishing. And he looks and he said, did you clean that up? I said, yeah. I got 5 kids. Did you see the mess here? He goes, yeah, I was trying to find a janitor, blah, 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 blah. And so we went on and had our meeting. I didn't think anything big about it. A couple days later, I get a call. It's from State Farm. It's Vitale. He goes, Dave, that was really something the other day. I mean, I told my colleagues about what you did. You know, they weren't surprised. That's just what, you know, that just says a lot about you. Do you have a structural engineering group over there? I said, no, we're geotechnical engineers. He goes, hire some structural engineers. We're prepared to give you $5 million of structural engineering work over the next year. That was our first big expansion. By the time Rogers Pacific was done, we had 9 different departments. All because, did I go out and try to build those? No. I was just trying to service my clients with humility and with honesty. And when we screwed up on something, I would admit it. I would cut them some kind of compensation for it. You treat your clients like you treat your parents, you'll be successful. So your character is what you do, not what you say. Cementing client trust. We can go to activities at men's clubs, business lunches, ball games, rounds of golf. I never learned how to play golf, never had time. Male-female roles. they've changed client-customer relations. One of the things that we found most effective at Rogers Pacific was taking our biggest clients on a yearly rafting trip. We would actually charter airplanes. We'd get on the airplanes in Palo Alto, we'd fly out to Idaho or someplace, we'd land on a highway, and we'd have an outfitter out there already. We'd blow up the boats. We'd get everybody on the boat, so we had to work together, paddling with together. No cell phone coverage, no computers, no distractions. It was amazing to watch the bonding that occurs when you got to go negotiate a whitewater river and camp out and deal with all the ripping bottom out of the holes in the raft, people getting hurt. It just bonds people together, and you build trust. So team building activities are very effective for developing relationships. I used to always say this to my wife when I'd come home from military trips. I'd say, oh, I met this guy, we went out to dinner and we had such a great time. And I'd always feel like I could bond with other guys in the military. And then I go to my own company, I go to my own church, I'd be there for 10 years, and I wouldn't have that same relationship with the people I went to church with. And the difference was, in the military, regardless of your background, doesn't matter how rich you are, what ethnic background you are, how smart you are, everybody has to go through the same hoops of training and put up with the same junk. And so you have a tremendous fraternity of shared experience. Anytime you meet a naval flight officer who's a lieutenant commander who's been in more than 10 years, he's been through all those same things that you've been through. So you can just pick up, it's kind of like you can just pick up with a person, and within an hour or two, you have this, you know a lot about each other, and you feel the other person understands you because you've all been through the same types of trials. There's a lot of truth there. So we tend to have like goes with like. So storytelling remains one of the best means of cementing trust in relationships. People love to hear stories. Students love to hear stories. I get emails all the time from students long past to say, I remember every one of your stories. I get that all the time. How are we doing interviews? That's what I just told you about. How are we doing interviews? You're inquiring about your blind spots. You're trying to foster trust. You have to follow up these things though with action. So you sit there and you write all the stuff down. Your wife's going to wait for you to do that, and your client's going to too. They're going to say, okay, this is all nice. Let's see if you follow it up, if you actually change your pattern of behavior. So you have to really be zealous in implementing the adjustments and the changes. Above all else, you have to show respect for your clients and customers. You have to let them know that you value their opinions, even if you don't agree with their perceptions. I had one client one time, and the guy would keep saying, Rogers, perceptions are reality. And my perception is such and such. And I didn't like his perception, but that was his reality. He's right. Perceptions are reality. So what you dress, how you cut your hair, what you say, all of those things are in the package of credibility. Are you going to get on an airliner if the pilots walk in looking like a rock star? They got piercings and all kind of things, and tattoos, and they're wearing a dirty t-shirt, and they got those blue jeans with all the slices down the front so you can see their penis and everything. You're not going to fly with them to Hawaii. You got to trust your life to somebody like that? No, you want the penis closed off, you know? You want the stuff off. Come on. So, I'll never forget Marine Corps Commandants Al Gray and Charlie Krulak. They would drive to the Pentagon in a pickup truck wearing civvies. Never put on their uniform until they get to the Pentagon. And they'd stop, one day I was with Al Gray when he did all this, he'd stop at 7-Eleven and he'd just talk to people and get the temperature of the people in the country. And that was during the Cold War. And young people in the country weren't worried about the Russians rolling us over. They're worried about being able to buy a house and have the same quality of life that their parents gave them when they were growing up. They didn't care about the communist threat. They'd heard about that all their life, but they hadn't seen any communists falling out of the sky. You know, you look up there, keep looking for communist paratroopers. We haven't seen them yet. And he was a realist, politically. He was a very, very wise man. So wise people do those kind of things. They're out there soliciting, trying to take the temperature of what people are thinking all the time. Trust is crucial to scoping out a problem. Now, this is the most important thing I'm going to tell you. Most problems You go out and study some kind of failure on a naval ship, on a Marine Corps base, downtown San Francisco. What you'll find is there was a breakdown in communication somewhere. Sometimes the design team, and the design team is led by somebody who's a big blowhard. And that blowhard has put down one of the people on that team. Let's say it's the geologist. He puts them down one day. And I heard this, you know.
Oh, you geologists, you know, you don't make as much as we do. You're not worth as much as we are.
So when they get to that part of the project where the geology is critical, what does that person do? I'll just let you go to your Waterloo, bud. I won't say anything. That's what happens. And they go to their Waterloo. And they have some geological disaster, and he goes, "Why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you speak up?" Doesn't matter. Who gets hung when it fails? The PM, project manager. Your ship goes aground in the Navy, your career's over. What? Yeah. I wasn't driving the ship. No, you weren't. Civilian pilot was driving the ship. But you have responsible charge of the ship. You're responsible for everything that happens on that ship. If your ship does go aground, you're done. Your career's over. Because you're only as good as the folks backing you up. And if you undercut the people that are backing you up, they're not going to watch your backside. When I first came in the Marine Corps, you would not want to hear the stories I heard about people in Vietnam who got shot accidentally by their own men because they were bad leaders. And the NCOs had to decide, do we let this guy kill a bunch of people, or we just kind of let him be a war hero? Oh, God, sniper guy. Oh, listen to these things. I was a kid. I was going, wow. And I remember one time my gunny sergeant saw the shocked look on my face. And he said, "You remember this when you go out. You're leading a platoon, son. If you're a shitty platoon leader, you ain't gonna last long." Wow. That was scary. I had trouble sleeping that night. So education provides information, but it doesn't equip us for success in a free market, because that's all about your ability to communicate interpersonally. When you see this job fair coming up next Tuesday, the 24th, what all recruiters are looking for, and engineers, is people that come up and talk to them. That's what they're looking for. You're all going to get a degree. That's a given. Yeah, put it on your resume. I mean, you have the degree, you don't have the degree. You can't be an engineer without a degree. You can't get registered without a degree. But what they're looking for are people who are going to communicate clearly and be good team players. Just what the military is looking for. Military is not looking for heroes. They're looking for team players. People who will lay their lives down for the soldier next to them. That's who they're looking for. People want to be on the skyline, be big, you know, big heroes. They don't want to give their lives for other people. That's the humble people that'll do that. The most humble among us are the only ones that are going to give our lives for somebody else. But that's who everybody wants on their team. What is some problem-solving etiquette? What are some of the things I learned about solving problems? One day, I have one here on the bottom, I was trying to go home for a date with my wife. My wife had a date with me that night, and I had a lieutenant colonel call from Iraq, and he had a bridge that was coming apart because the Tigris River was in flood stage, and I had told a major in his battalion under him 5 months earlier that wait, you know, this bridge is nice. It's the biggest bridge since the one at Ramadan in 1945. But I said, when that river goes into flood stage, it's going to come up 20 feet and dig down 40. What are your anchors in? Well, there's screw anchors in the sand. I said, they're all going to come out when you have the flood next spring. And he goes, well, that's what we got. Well, guess what? 5.5 months went by, they were losing the bridge. In fact, they had lost all the anchors, and they had motorboats pushing against the bridge on every single pontoon 24/7, trying to just hold it there. I could feel the guy's dying in his voice. He's like, "You're my last hope. Could you help me? Pull something out of that tool chest of yours. I heard, you know, you're a problem solver. I need to do something." I'm going, I'm not a treadway bridge expert. I sent a flare prayer to God. Help! So what do? I learned in a survival, escape, and evasion school. You think rationally, and you go through, what do I have to do? navigate, you know, you got to think about all these things. And I thought, okay, tell me, I'm going to summarize on a single page. How many men do you have? What type of men? How much kind of equipment do you have? How much diesel fuel do you have? He could only hold out for about another day and a half, the rate he was going, and he was expending the diesel fuel. What kind of equipment do you have? What type of trucks? What type of, do you have any cable? Do you have this? Do you have that? And I'm just praying the whole time. And finally, it hit me. The one thing he had lots of on the far bank was more pontoons. Well, these pontoons are as big as this room. They're big, huge steel boxes. They're about this deep. And the idea came to me, we could take 2 channel irons, cross them, lash them together, tie the cables to those, put those in the middle of these big, huge boxes, fill the boxes with rock, take them out, and sink them. Pop holes in the bottom with little, 1-ounce C4 charges, and sink these big behemoths, and they're not going to go anywhere. Tigris River's not going to take those things anywhere. And that's what they ended up doing. So you train yourself to identify which factors are going to affect the proposed solutions. Do you want short-term, intermediate, or long-term solutions? This is the one I always use with clients. Except today I don't call it short-term, I call it Walmart. Do you want Walmart duct tape solution? Could fail tomorrow. It's the cheapest one, quickest one. Or do you want something that's more intermediate or more long-term? Transportation agencies, highway departments, all want long-term. Railroads always want it short-term. Why? Railroads have their own engineering group. And they can fix it. If it fails tomorrow, they'll just fix it again. That always surprised me. But you have to ask them, what do they want? When I was a young father, we bought a brand new house coming out of grad school. I was 28 years old, and we just gotten married. And the garbage disposal broke down about 3 years into the house. So I went down to Sears and bought another one just like the one I had. And I think it was $69. And I put that one in, and this one only went about 2 years, and then it failed. Then the next one went about 1 year. And by this time, I got the company up and going, I'm busy, I'm working 70 hours a week. Why do I have to keep fixing this stupid garbage disposal? So I go down there and I say to the guy at Sears, the manager of that department, I say, which one here is gonna last? And he goes, oh, the commercial grade one. The one that's made out of stainless steel. How much is it? $249. I'll take it. Why? Because I could afford $249 by that point, and I didn't want to come back and fix it a 4th time. I wanted this to be the end. That's how clients are. They're just the same way. The ones who are the most conservative with you are the older ones who've been through the most crap. They've seen failures happen over and over and over. They don't want to have that happen again. Not on their watch. And the ones who always take the duct tape and Walmart one are the 18-year-olds. They're like, yeah, I got all I like to live, If it fails tomorrow, it makes more work for me anyway, so we'll take that cheap one. So, and there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you have your eyes open and you look at it. Now, you have to learn to exercise due diligence. You're going to hear that's a term, the lawyers love to use that one, due diligence. What does that mean? It means try to avoid snap judgments unless the situation warrants. I had one once. It was a post-tension precast concrete bridge span, again in Iraq. After I'd done this thing with a pontoon bridge, I started getting more calls. And again, it was a lieutenant colonel, battalion skipper, commander calls me, and he says, we had a bus fire last night, and we only have one span on this bridge left. And they blew up a bus. The bus burned diesel fire for 8 hours. How damaged is the bridge deck? How do I know if I can run a tank over it or not? And do you have any quick and dirty way of doing that? And I, Lord, help me. I didn't. So I went through the same thing with him. What kind of equipment do you have? Give me a picture of the bridge. And he had guys helping him there, and they were sending me stuff right there while I was talking to him. So here it comes in on the internet, right here to Hillbillyville, Rolla, other side of the world. And I see, there's his bridge. It's a 5-span bridge. The middle span's a beautiful elliptical arch. It's all post-tension, built by a French contractor. It's gorgeous, what's left of it. But I see that where the bus burned last night, that span is the exact mirror of the span over here on the other side of the main span. And I go, light bulb. We can go instrument the undamaged one and then compare the strains with the damaged one, and we'll have the damaged diminished capacity. And that's what we did. They had little SR4 strain gauges that cost $1 a piece. They had those in their inventory in the Engineer Combat Battalion. We had them put those on, epoxy them, bring a tank transporter with an M1A1 tank on it. It's the heaviest thing we could put out there, 1,000 pounds, load the bridge, measure the deflections, then go over, measure the damaged one. We pushed the bus into the river and measure the damaged one. It was 13% diminished capacity. Schlumberger had told them they couldn't get out there for 6 weeks and it would cost at least $3 million to look at it. I did that on the back of an envelope basically in about an hour and a half. Due diligence is going to save you from making a lot of mistakes in life. All the worst decisions I made in business were when I was in a rush or I was under duress and I didn't think about it for a long time. One of the things I want to warn you about, never send an email in anger. And never send an email or a text that you don't want to be on the front page of the New York Times. Not ever. If somebody really ticks you off, you can write whatever you want to write, but don't send it to anybody. Just keep it there and look at it tomorrow after you sleep on it. I have seen more people get into trouble sending back fiery emails, and then they get used against you. And they make you look really, what? Stupid, angry, mad, self-centered, mentally unstable. Step 3, make it your business to collect instructive case histories. You search out previous cases, we call those analogs, and you fill your problem-solving toolkit with all these things and say, ask yourself, how did people fix this problem in the past? That's really important to know before you go out and fix it today. I made a lot of mistakes that way. One of my famous stories is Lucian Truscott, who was an engineer general under George Patton in Sicily when Patton was commanding the 3rd Army, or 7th Army in Sicily. Truscott was commanding the 3rd Infantry Division. Now Truscott had come up from the bottom. He wasn't a West Pointer. He had actually come up from the bottom and was a division commander. That's very unusual. 2 stars. And he turned to Truscott and said, the Germans had this highway they had taken over, and they were retreating toward Medina, and Patton was trying to race with Bernard Montgomery coming up the east side of Sicily, with him going across the north side, and the Germans had this place where there was a mountain range, and there was a tunnel and a bridge on the other side of the tunnel. And the Germans had blown up the bridge and blown up both ends of the tunnel. So it would take them a day to clear the west end of the tunnel, then go to the east end of the tunnel, another day to clear that one out, and then another day to build the bridge. And Patton came up to him and said, Lucian, I gave you 24 hours to get your division other side of that mountain. He goes, General, that's impossible. Well, that's what I deal in. I deal in the impossible. That's why I'm old blood and guts. He leaves. So, Truscott, instead of just issuing his resignation, he brings all his people together, his general staff, and said, does anybody have any ideas? And he had a naval liaison engineer, CB officer. The Navy guy raised his hand and said, we could call and ask the Navy to bring 1 battalion of engineers. We have 3 battalions of engineers in the division. We could take 1 battalion up the coast around the mountain and land them and have them go up and work on the east tunnel portal, and then take the other battalion, bring them up, and have them working on the bridge while the 3rd battalion's working to clear the front end. And they did it. 24 hours. It's an incredible story. It was written, Ernie Pyle wrote it up in a book called Brave Men, chapter 5 in there. So that's a great case history. Think outside the box. Think of other ways of using what you have to solve a problem using creativity. One more thing, the more things you've done in your lifetime, the more you have in your problem-solving toolbox. Ask any car mechanic. Who's the best car mechanic? The guy who's done the most work on your kind of car. That's who the best car mechanic is. It just depends. But the more experience you have, the better you're going to get at troubleshooting something. Everything you read counts. Historical sketches count. Anything you glean from a credible source. One that I was on the water adjudication panel for UNESCO between Israel, the Palestinian Authority, and Jordan. And we had this problem with Bolanus truncatus snails creating in the water supply at Jericho, and it was causing everybody to have diarrhea and the flu. And it was even killing some people, which it can do to dehydrate you, coming up with chronic dysentery. And I remembered reading about Elisha tossing salt into Jericho's water supply in my Bible reading. So I just innocently mentioned at the meeting, have you tried salt? Salt in small doses won't hurt the people, but it'll kill these parasites. And that's what we ended up doing. We ended up putting a hunk of salt in the well about the size of a softball. Took care of the problem. Now, when I read that in the Bible, I never thought I'd ever use it for anything. You don't know where you're going to use things. You flipping burgers at McDonald's, you may not think that that's important. It's important. Lots more people have come out of McDonald's and started successful businesses than any other business venture in America. Because McDonald's has an incredible management trainee manual. And that trainee manual is valuable for any kind of business. Whether you're doing a post office business, a UPS store, a copy business, it's still valuable because you're working with people. And you're working with whoever walks in off the street. And do you get the cream of the crop clientele at McDonald's? No! You're going to get some of the most difficult SOBs out there. That's great training. As my dad said, how are you going to appreciate a good job if you never worked some crappy ones? You got to work some crappy jobs so that you appreciate a good one when you get it. Importance of analogs. I would maintain there's no truly new challenges, just different tools and technologies available for solutions. High-tech solutions usually require a lot of money and they require more time because the high-tech guys are always busy and riding high. A comparable case study is an analog. So we always want to ask ourselves, what's an analog I can use here? I was on the Department of Interior advisory panel on the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, largest oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico history a couple years ago, and 93 million barrels of oil. And we get out there and they show us all these pictures of the methyl hydrate on the floor of the ocean, over a mile deep. So there's 12 scientists and 3 engineers, so I'm outnumbered. So the engineers ask the why questions. So finally my turn comes, and I hear all this stuff, and I say, why are we so concerned if this methyl hydrate is 175 miles offshore and it's down on the bottom of the ocean? How is it hurting us? How's it hurting the tourism on the coast and blah, blah, blah? And the scientist turned and looked at me and said, thought I smelled something here. You're an engineer, aren't you? Yes, I'm an engineer. And the 2 engineers, and their hair goes up, you know, and yeah, we're engineers. You obviously missed in the 3rd or 4th grade, we talk about the food chain. Don't you remember the food chain? Yeah, you know, that's the big animals eating the littler animals, eating the littler ones, you know, like the mama fish eats the worm, you know, that kind of thing, right? Yeah. And you know what all that methyl hydrate does down there on the bottom of the ocean floor, Rogers? It kills the sea worms. You know how many sea worms are in the world? Something like 47 trillion. There's more sea worms than any other life form on planet Earth. So, it's just a matter of time before this catastrophe is a series of dominoes that come right up the Mississippi River and wipe out Missouri. It's a cascading effect. You're going to kill everything in the Gulf of Mexico. They said that. Lady X said that. And kill everything in the Gulf of Mexico, blah, blah, blah. So, you know, I had to sit down, shut up, don't say anything. The next day, we have a 3-day meeting. The next day, one of the things they tell us is they say, now you realize you have a Congressional Research Office. Oh, really? I remember that from the Pentagon. CRO will do any kind of research you want on anything. So after we went to lunch, we're sitting there having a more informal setting. I said to the people, I said, hey, you know, I got an idea I want to bounce off all of you. Is it about the food chain? No, not about the food chain, but, you know, I deal in this thing called analogs. Analogs is where we look and see other things that have happened that are similar to the one that we're working on, so we can see, we can go to school on them and learn from them. And the scientists all, they can identify with that. They go, okay, sure, analog, all right, gotcha. Well, what are you suggesting? I said, why don't we ask the CRO to give us a list of all the oil spills in the Gulf of Mexico that are more than a million barrels, where they occurred, what depth, and when. And they go, I thought you were a real ass yesterday. That's a good idea. We'll do that. So they did it. And we got answers, just a day later. And they told us Ixtoc 1 was 67 million barrels of oil, 30 years previous, 1979 to 80. And it was down between the Yucatan Peninsula and mainland Mexico at about 2,700 feet of water. It wasn't quite as deep, but it's 2/3 the same volume. And they said, whoa! And so they had this one professor on our group. She was from University of Georgia, I think, and she had a deep submersible that could go out and dive on that. And everybody got real excited. They said, Rogers, we're going to show you. 30 years later, what happens with the dominoes, the food chain? I said, okay, I'm all for it. Set them down there. So 6 weeks later, we meet again. This time we're down in New Orleans. And very dour faces. They went down, they dove on Ixtoc 1, and what did they see? But a bunch of little smiling sea worms going. They came back. I don't know if they took Greyhound bus, railroad, I don't know what it is, but methyl hydrate was gone, the little beasties were back, couldn't see any environmental impact at all. Was it of value to have that analog? Yeah, pretty valuable. Step 4, realize that simple is often more elegant than complex. The simplest solutions are often the best in terms of cost benefit, because the amount of money we spend on engineering can only be justified through cost benefit analysis. So low-tech solutions have all but vanished from America. We don't teach these at the university. Most formal engineering training is focused on new construction rather than on repairing systems that are aged or broken. That was most of my work at Rogers Pacific, was old systems that were broken or needed repairing. That's where most of the work has been the last 5 years for sure in the recession. House movers and plumbers were about the most innovative people I ever worked with. I had a mentor that was a house mover. He was incredible. No two jobs that guy ever did were the same. He could move anything. Couldn't move South TJ, but he could move anything. He'd cut buildings up, put them on, and you have to know where to cut. You have to know how to put them back together. He wouldn't always put them back together the same way they were over here. He'd change them around a little bit, put them on some parcel somewhere. He owned a lot of rental properties, like over 300. He was very wealthy. Didn't go to college. Some of our country's greatest technical challenge involved decaying infrastructure. Just look at these things. These were all in May. Metro rail train derailment in Connecticut, oversized payload knocking down Interstate 5 bridge in Mount Vernon, Washington, 2 trains colliding down here near Scott City, Missouri. All of these were failures to communicate. They're communication failures. And the bridge that got hit, they had told that driver that that bridge had the clearance for his load. It didn't. The computer printout was wrong. So those are communication errors. When you're working in a new area, do some background research before you jump into it. If I'm going down to Guatemala to work on some dam or something, I'm going to do a lot of beefing up on Guatemala before I ever go down there. Perform a reconnaissance and familiarize yourself with the area. Go a day or two early. Walk around and look at things. Ask people questions. Prepare yourself to explain to your client or customer why the problems have occurred and why they have been mitigated. And then you school yourself up to become a subject matter expert. One of the most interesting days I ever had in my life, people always ask me, what was the most interesting thing you ever did as an intelligence officer? It was a case involving Kurt Waldheim, the UN Secretary General. And he was going to run for president of Austria. And somebody sent us from Europe to the State Department an 8x10 glossy Nazi picture with a Nazi stamp on the back, dated July 17, 1944, and it showed an SS Obergruppenführer who had been executed after the war for the killing of 70,000 Jews in Salonika. And there was Kurt Waldheim standing right by him, and his name's on the back. And if you went to Kurt Waldheim's resume, it said that in July '44 he was in law school in Vienna. And I'm sitting there going, who was in law school in Vienna during World War II? They're starving. They're losing the war. People are going to law school? Really? But that's what he maintained. So we got the picture, and they said, go have this authenticated. And I said, at the CIA, I said, we got somebody that authenticates pictures? Oh yeah, you'll love them. That's why we're sending you over there. He's a photo expert. And I went over there, and I met this nerdy guy. He didn't have that picture about 3 minutes, and he said, this is authentic. And then I asked him, how do you know that? And the next hour, he showed me how he knew that. I didn't know there were people like that. I mean, this guy, you know, see, that paper has zinc in it. I just taste my finger, that tasting zinc. Anyway, there's people out there like that. And that's the kind of person you want to fix in your car. If somebody looks at your car and they're going to make love to it, go, ooh, I haven't seen one of these, a Bugatti. Oh. You know if subject matter expert when that's all they talk about. And with engineers, there's a lot of them like that. I remember going to weddings with engineers, and they'd be over here in a corner. One guy would be talking about trucks, another guy about trains. They don't get off anything that they're uncomfortable with. They just talk about baseball or something. That's just how, that's a subject matter expert, that they live, eat, breathe it. Some of them get married, but most of them don't. You gotta be rounded off to be married a little more. You can't have the shower to yourself all the time. Subject matter experts are always collecting intelligence, and they're keeping abreast of their competitors' methods to avoid obsolescence. The Japanese are big on this, and so are the Chinese. Do they have industrial espionage? Yes. Do they have spies working over here? Yes. They're out there collecting them out. That's what we did, my family, for vacation. We went out and watched our competitors' construction jobs. Because my dad wanted to see if he can learn anything from watching those guys, see if they're using a new piece of equipment, new kind of technique, because you don't want to get left in the dust. You want to keep your competitive edge. So problem-solving skills come from rich and varied experience and zealous enthusiasm for your vocation. If you love what you're doing, you're going to stay on top of it. I don't care if you're a beautician, whatever you are. You can tell when somebody's a subject matter expert because it's all they talk about. And they're good to have around. When you're framing models for possible solutions, you often got to ask yourself, could I solve this problem using the stuff I already have? This is what every father does, who does fix-it stuff at home. You know, what do I have here? Do I have to go to Lowe's? Or can I have something here that I can fix this with? How would a Roman military engineer solve this problem? That's what I use in Iraq and Afghanistan. Because one thing they have a lot of there is rocks, sand, and gravel. Okay? So I try to fix everything with rocks, sand, and gravel, and use compression, you know, use gravity structures. Because that's easy. The basic framing questions you ask is, how robust must the solution be? Robust is how strong is it? Like going to the stainless steel garbage disposal. That was a robust solution. What level of quality is desired? How long do you want it to last? How much redundancy should my solution possess? Redundancy means if I take one thing out, something else is going to pull the load. So if I shoot a bullet into a military plane, can one bullet in one particular place hit a hydraulic line and knock the plane out of the air? That's what happened in Vietnam. We lost 5,417 helicopters in Vietnam because if you hit one hydraulic line, you knock the helicopter down. Now today, when you hit an Army Black Hawk helicopter, it has 6 separate hydraulic systems in the plane. So you would need 6 direct hits on all 6 of those systems to knock it down right away. So that's called redundancy. Multiple lines of defense are a central theme of systems engineering. That's why the 2 safest professions are commercial aviation and mining. Yeah, less people are killed in mining per work day than any other profession in the United States. It's 10 times more dangerous to be a fireman than to be a miner. Because every time a miner gets killed, it gets on the front page of every paper. Every time somebody gets killed on the highway, it doesn't make the front page of the paper. There aren't enough papers. 55,000 people a year die on the highway. You don't even see it in the paper, unless it's the mayor or something. What level of resilience is desired? Resilience is the time and expense incurred to gain full recovery they have to need. So you have to carefully package a solution, and you have to learn how to sell it. This is what I didn't know how to do. I had to learn this over a 17-year period. And I would begin by telling my client about a conventional solution and how much a conventional solution would cost, and then I'd allow them to have sticker shock before I showed them anything else. And I always allowed the customer to make the decision in the end. I never would force anything on them. I would just pull it out there and gradually put it out there and say, well, you could do this. It's not as good as over here, but it costs a lot less, and here's what the uncertainties are, and that's how you are going to get a repeat customer. So you present it to them, you say, well, I have something that's novel, it's a low-cost solution, and you have to wait and gauge their interest. Who did I learn that from? Used car salesmen. Used car salesmen, first thing they're going to ask you, what you looking for here today? How much money do you have to spend? And he's going to get every penny, your maximum amount. So you tell him you have $4,600, he's not going to find any car on the lot under $4,600, I'll tell you right now. He wants you to spend all of it there. Remember, the scale of the goods or services is not the issue. The relative scale or size of any business transaction is not a variable. It's how you treat the clients with dignity and respect. It's like a marriage. Trust is built from honest interchange. I hear about guys all the time lying to their wives. I say to all of them, don't do it. It's not worth it. If they find out, you're never... Guys are used to lying to each other and bragging about things, you know. Yeah, I was playing football and 7 million receptions, you know, blah, blah, blah. You know? But women, if you lie to a woman, says, you thought I was stupid. That's why you lied to me. You think I'm stupid. You don't respect me. You'll never get the trust back. So you have to have mutual respect between the parties in order to have a successful relationship. It's really important. So even if you own a yogurt shop in St. James, Missouri, you still have to do the same things. Perform market surveys, be aware of your competition, you got to know when and where your product sells best, and the problem-solving skills developed for military situations also work for commercial challenges. Even the stuff I'm working on right now, the General Motors losing their domestic market share with everybody less than 35 years old, and how to save the Mississippi Delta, who's going to pay for it? These are very, very difficult things. Change doesn't occur unless you have an economic engine to pay for the change. That's what you have to figure out. That's the hard part. So yogurt shop's not going to sell a lot of yogurt on a cold day. Maybe you don't need to be open in the wintertime. So keep your focus on serving others you presently have and hone the skills before you venture into new markets. The greatest among us is going to be the one who's the servant. That's how it was in the military. I saw that over and over again. You couldn't pick the winners from their outward appearance. What everybody's looking for is somebody who's humble and who's going to give their life for the guy next to them. And never forget that every good deed you do with a clear conscience will be noticed by the folks who are watching you. All your coworkers are watching you wherever you work. I never had trouble firing anybody in my companies because every other person in the company would tell me what that person was doing, cheating us, cheating the company, and deserved to be fired. Some of them would even come in and say, if you don't fire them, I'm quitting. A lot of people would say that. So it was never a hard decision. They weren't fooling anybody. They thought they were, because I wasn't there in the office when they were doing this stuff, but I had eyes everywhere. What everyone seeks is what's in your hand. Sufficient diligence and creativity to see what needs doing and do it without being asked. That's what Elbert Hubbard's A Message to Garcia is about, a guy named Lieutenant Andrew Rowan, who President McKinley says, I got to get a message to General Garcia in Cuba, because we're going to go to war with Spain. And his Secretary of War, Russell Alger, says, we don't know where Garcia is. He's a guerrilla. Cuba's 790 miles long. It's got 3,000 miles of shoreline. Nobody knows where Garcia is. They bring in their head of military intelligence. He says, I have a young officer who will do that for you. And the young officer left 16 hours later. He was leaving the port of New York. He came in, they said, we want you to take a message to Garcia. Nothing in writing. He had to memorize all of it. He couldn't wear a uniform. And he just said, yes, sir. He had been a lieutenant for 17 years. He took longer to get through the service academies than any other person in American history. 9 years. 5 years trying to get to the Naval Academy, he didn't make it. Then another 4 getting through West Point, he did make it. And he carried the message to Garcia. He found his way onto the island. He escaped death over and over and over again. He took the message to him and got it to him. And it changed the whole course of the Spanish-American War. So that's what everybody's looking for. They're looking for people who clean up the baby poop, who clean up the vomit when they don't have to. They might have a PhD. See, what people want to see is an attitude of service and humility. That's what I want to leave you with, what I've learned in my 60 years of lifetime. That's my last lecture. Thanks.